どうも、勝手に電力2.0ゼミ始めたいと思います。今日は988回目ということで、この船舶の脱炭素化っていうところですね。特にこの長期サイクルなんですよね。実際に船っていうのはなかなか買いづらいので、燃料をどうやって変えていくのか、みたいなところがかなり大事になってくるので、どうやってこの長期サイクルっていうところを先にやっておかないと2050年っていうあと20何年なんで、じゃあ船の買い替えサイクルっていうのがそんなに早く進んでいくのかっていうのはないので、既存のものの燃料をどうやって脱炭素化していくのか、みたいなところの観点からですね、IEM もちょっといろいろ取り組んでいるところがあるので、そのあたりをお話しさせてもらおうかなと思ってますと。で、まずはチャット GPT でその報告書とかですね、IA のところを少し見て、これ合ってるかどうかわかんないんですけども、この国際海運が直面している課題、今後の展望について、国際エネルギー機関 IA が分析したものをっていうことで、国際海運は世界貿易の 90% 以上を支える非常に重要な役割になっており、環境経済、社会の観点から重要性が高いと。国際海運は、二酸化炭素 CO2 や窒素酸化物 NOx、微粒子などの大気汚染物質を排出しており、温暖化や健康被害に寄与していると。国際海運においては、低用燃料への移行や排出規制の強化、エネルギー効率の向上など、環境負荷の低減が求められる。今後、国際海運においては、再生可能エネルギーの導入や船舶の電動化、デジタル技術の活用など技術革新が進むことが予想されていると。国際海運における環境負荷の低減や技術革新に向けては国際的な協調が必要であると。国際海事機関 IMO において環境保護や安全性確保に関する国際規制の策定が進められていると。国際海運における環境負荷の低減や技術革新に向けた取り組みは、費用の増大や技術の移行など様々な課題を伴う。そのため、業界、政府、国際機関など協力して持続可能な国際海運の実現を目指すことが重要であるみたいなところが書いてあったということですね。まさにインターナショナルシッピング。In 2021, international shipping accounted for 2% of global energy-related CO2 emissions, while measures approved by the International Maritime Organization are likely to curb the rise of emissions over the 2020s. A greater policy ambition is needed to steer the maritime shipping sector onto the pathway in the net zero emission by 2050 scenario, which entails almost 15 reduction in emission from 2021 to 2030, 15%ですね、削減が必要だと。Technological innovation, supportive politics, and collaboration across the value chain are needed to drive the adoption of low and zero carbon fuels and technologies for ocean-going vessels. CO2 emissions from international shipping began rebounding in 2021 from a dip in 2020. In 2021, emissions from the international shipping sector grew by 5%, rebounding from the sharp decline in 2020 to reach 2015 levels. To get on track with the net zero scenario, total emissions will need to remain steady to about 2025, despite an expected increase in activity, and then begin decreasing by about 3% per year to 2030, resulting in a total decrease of over 15% from 2025 to 2030. Innovation is vital to ensure that zero-emission ocean-going vessels are made commercially available by the mid-2020s. The stringency of existing politics from the International Maritime Organization (IMO), such as operational emission intensity standards, needs to be increased to ensure significant emission reductions and to encourage the adoption of low and zero carbon fuels and technologies for ocean-going vessels. Scaling up low carbon fuels is the key to decarbonizing international shipping. Historically, oil products have constituted over 99% of total energy for international shipping. In 2021, biofuels met less than half of 1% of total energy demand from international shipping. To get on track with the net zero scenario, the penetration of alternative fuels, including biofuels, hydrogen, ammonia, and electricity, will need to increase in this sector. By 2030, low carbon fuels represent about 15% of total energy demand in the net zero scenario, while about half of low carbon fuel use in 2030 is in the form of biofuels, which can be used in existing vessels. Technological development and associated policy support will be important to enable the use of other fuels, particularly ammonia and hydrogen, in order to reduce dependency on oil-based fuels in international shipping because of long vessel lifetimes and slow stock turnover. Near-term innovation and zero-emission technology adoption are critical to putting international shipping on the net zero scenario pathway. Industry is progressing the development of zero-emission vessel. According to the Global Marine Forum, over 85 zero-emission vessel pilots and demonstrations were initiated during 2021 and the first quarter of 2022 of the over 200 projects explored in their study. About 45 focused on hydrogen technologies and another 40 on ammonia technologies for shipping. Battery-powered vessels represent another 30 projects. Methanol vessel projects account for about 25 projects. Orders for new ships are also showing a trend towards alternative fuels, despite near-term constraints with respect to the readiness of zero-emission technologies. It has been reported that in the first half of 2022, 66 new build orders were for ammonia-ready vessels and 3 were for hydrogen-ready vessels. Bunkering infrastructure for alternative fuels will be a key enabler. New fueling infrastructure will be needed to enable the use of alternative zero-emission fuel for international shipping. In November 2021, clean energy solutions provider Unitrove unveiled the world's first liquid hydrogen bunkering facility, albeit still pre-commercialization in 2021. There were also a number of announcements regarding ammonia and ammonia-ready bunkering designs. These include ammonia bunkering vessels as well as the world's first floating ammonia bunker terminal. The Global Maritime Forum reports that in first quarter of 2022, there were over 20 hydrogen bunkering infrastructure projects and over 10 for ammonia. In addition to bunkering infrastructure, efforts will be needed to establish the entire fuel supply chain, including fuel production, transport, distribution, and storage. Regulators look to carbon intensity standards to reduce shipping emissions. In June 2021, the IMO adopted a set of short-term measures expected to enter into force in November 2022 to achieve the target of reducing the carbon intensity of shipping by 40% by 2030. The measure compromise mandatory goal-based operational and technical requirements to work towards achieving the initial strategy for reducing CO2 emissions by at least 50% in 2050 compared to 28. In July 2021, the European Commission proposed the Fuel IEU Maritime Initiative, which imposed constraints on the average annual GHG intensity of onboard energy used by ships. These limits become stricter over time, starting at a 2% reduction in 2025, rising to 6% in 2030, and up to 75% in 2050 relative to the 2020 GHG intensity. The goal is to force ships to gradually adopt low-carbon fuels during voyage within the European Union and for half of voyages to and from the European Union. However, there is concern that unless revised, the proposal risks supporting the adoption of liquefied natural gas and jeopardizing and the transition to zero-emission shipping. In July 2022, the U.S. House of Representatives introduced the Clean Shipping Act of 2022, which would set carbon intensity standards for marine vessel fuels, modeled on the European Union framework. The limits in the US proposal are more stringent than those proposed by the European Union, requiring 100% zero-emission fuel from 2040. COP26 spurred international collaboration on zero-emission shipping. At the UN Climate Change Conference in 2021, COP26, a number of declarations were made regarding the advancement of zero-emission shipping. One of these was the Credit Bank Declaration for Green Shipping Corridors, signed by more than 20 countries that agreed to support the establishment of zero-emission maritime routes between 2 or more ports. The objective is to establish at least 6 green corridors by the middle of this decade. Since the declaration, Los Angeles and Shanghai have announced a partnership to create such a corridor along one of the busiest maritime trade routes in the world. In addition to other announcements for European Green Corridor Network and the Chilean Green Corridor Network. In addition, at COP26, 14 countries also signed the Declaration on Zero-Emission Shipping by 2050. Signatories to this declaration pledged to push the IMO to adopt a goal of full decarbonization of international shipping by 2050. And 55 countries signed a declaration calling on the IMO to establish a mandatory GHG levy on international shipping to align the sector with 1.5 pathway. Under the Mission Innovation Framework, lead nation Norway, the United States and Denmark, together with a group of core member nations and support nations, have launched the Zero-Emission Shipping Mission. The goal is to achieve a fleet of ships capable of running on alternative fuels that can comprise at least 5% of the global deep-sea fleet by 2030. In June 2022, over 100 CEOs and government officials agreed to set up a public-private cross-sectoral collaboration platform in coordination with the Clean Energy Ministerial. And the Clean Energy Marine Hub platform would enable the acceleration of low-carbon fuel projects that can facilitate the transport of this fuel by sea, making shipping an enabler of the wider energy transition. Private sector decarbonization goals provide a market pool for zero-emission vessels. Given that the current IMO targets fall short of what is needed to get on track with the net zero scenario, and that international shipping is hard for individual governments to regulate effectively, the private sector may find it's playing a significant role in decarbonization shipping. Industry players across the shipping sector, shipbuilders, operators, cargo owners, etc., have come together under different initiatives that aim to promote shipping decarbonization strategies. Cargo owners for zero-emission vessel, called ZEV, bring together several international companies, including Amazon, with the aim of using only zero-carbon ocean freight transport by 2040. The Getting to Zero Coalition is an alliance of more than 150 companies with the ambition to accelerate maritime shipping decarbonization through the development and deployment of commercially viable deep-sea zero-emission vessels by 2030. Towards full decarbonization by 2050, the Poseidon Principles and Sea Cargo Charter provide frameworks for integrated climate considerations into lending decisions for international shipping and for aligning chartering activities with decarbonization goals, respectively. Increase the stringency of operational carbon intensity standards to encourage adoption of low-carbon fuels. Operational GHG standards specify mandatory requirements for ships to reduce their operational carbon intensity per unit of transport work. These standards allow market participants to choose the most convenient and suitable compliance strategy while gradually tightening requirements for lowering the GHG intensity of vessel. While the IMO has implemented such requirements, the stringency of specified reductions must be strengthened to surpass the level described in the IMO's initial GHG strategy. These standards should be tightened immediately, as progress in decarbonizing the shipping sector must be made now, not stall until the approval medium-term measures in 2023 to 2030, as currently outlined. Further, the implementation of material non-compliance measures and extension of standards to well-wake emissions would strengthen the current regulations. Evaluate emissions on the well-to-wake basis. Importantly, The IMO's carbon intensity measure focuses on the operational emissions, meaning that only those from onboard fuel combustion are counted. In contrast, measuring on a well-to-wake basis takes all emissions associated with fuel extraction, production, processing, and delivery into account. Regulating well-to-wake emissions can support the transition to truly low-carbon fuels and avoid incentivizing the reallocation of GHG emissions from onboard operations to upstream fuel production processes. Use direct mandates to ensure the deployment of zero-emission fuels. Directly mandate quotas of certain zero-emission fuels and technologies is essential to create a guaranteed demand for the technology providers and green fuel suppliers, and to incentivize investment in green fuel production and supply. Direct mandates are increasingly being used in other transport sectors, as seen with zero-emission vehicle mandates for road transport and proposed refuel EU aviation regulation, both of which set minimum quotas for the deployment of zero-emission fuels and/or technologies. Such measures can help avoid unintended consequences that could stem from carbon intensity standards that are not sufficiently strict in the level of emission reductions and/or do not fully incorporate well-to-wake GHG emissions. Invest in new vessels capable of running on zero-emission fuels. Vessels have a lifetime of 20 to 35 years, meaning investments in new vessels today will have a huge impact on the ability of the sector to decarbonize. In 2022, the first ammonia-laden vessel was delivered. New ships should be designed to be able to convert to zero-emission fuels in the future to avoid sunk costs on fossil fuel vessels. Corporate investment in RD&D on zero-carbon fuel technologies needs to be ramped up. The industry has estimated the USD $5 billion is needed to advance alternative technologies